What you're looking at here are various stability stats. This has been a little passion project of mine for a long time, like ever since I covered range way back when. But with this, something like this, stability, it takes time to get all that information together. It's taken months. There's a lot of testing, a lot of numbers to go through that went into this. I mean, we're talking console with its field of view, PC with its max field of view, then using mouse and keyboard and controller with that max field of view. I want to go through the process of what I did, how I tested, and with what I plan to show you is the effects of visual recoil, things to look out for, and even the little midline stability number to shoot for. But before we get into those numbers, and there are a lot of them, be prepared, I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, GMG Performance. They specialize in blue light glasses, which helps protect your eyes, and that's help reducing eye strain, eye fatigue, helps your quality of sleep. I'm sure you've heard the term blue light before. And I, like many of you, spend a lot of time in front of screens. Like I'm looking right now, you can see the reflection. I have an IPS panel, a couple TNs, there's different brightness levels. The IPS pops colors a little bit more. And I'm in front of this thing 8 to 10 hours a day, sometimes more. And over half of that, like 80% of that's just editing. And you're gonna see, I'll show you the timeline of this video, there's like 300 plus stills and clips. There's a lot of editing that went in this video, so I'm in front of them a lot. So while I'm doing it, I can really feel the stress of my eyes being relieved. It's almost like, I have really sensitive eyes, it's almost like going out without sunglasses on, outside, and the graphics are great, and you know, you're squinting, it just feels really bad, but once you put on sunglasses, you feel like that release, you feel everything get a little bit better. That's what it's like for me when I put on blue light glasses. And I have been using them for about 3 or 4 years. I've used different companies, but with these, can confirm, these are the lightest frames that I've ever had on a blue light glasses. Like, they're lighter than my regular eyeglasses, which is insane. And also a first for me, like, I didn't know that a clear lens was a thing to block the blue light. I've always had the yellow, which is fine, it's great, but with these being clear, it's like I don't even have them on at all. And with this blue light, you know, these screens that we're in front of all the time, we've learned through time that it can damage your eyes. It does damage your eyes. Like, our eye doesn't have the natural defense against it. You need something like these. So they've been wonderful, they've been great, and actually starting, by the time you're watching this video, up till November 1st at, what, 11:59, they're doing 40% off of all of them. These are the optimizers, they're great. I love that they're clear, they're fantastic. So go take advantage of that, start protecting your eyes. From the time you're watching this video, again, all the way till November 1st, 11:59, it's 40% off. There's a link down below at the very top of the description, go check them out. And I really hope you guys get behind GMG like they've gotten behind me. It's a really great deal that they have going on. When making this video, doing these tests, I learned a lot, and there's a lot of things I can confirm. There's so many little details, a lot of variables, there's a lot of things to consider. The weapon tested is a dire promise. This is currently a 150 RPM hand cannon. Come beyond light, it's turning into a 140, so you might be thinking that the test on this weapon isn't valid, but that's where you're wrong. In this sequence of clips, I can show some other things of what I mean as well. The stability stat for a new 120, a 140, a 150, any hand cannon that isn't a precision frame, they're all universal, believe it or not. When you cross compare with a specific stat of, let's say, 60, 55, again, it could be a 150, a 120, a 140 RPM hand cannon, they all have the same magnitude of recoil, the same amount of upkick. And something that I want to get into, even though it might look different, they're the same. Like right here between Spare Rations and Dire Promise, the barrel is in the same spot, it's just that Spare Rations has that little cosmetic sight at the end of the weapon model, that little bar that it has. It's one of the things I had to pay attention to. Or when you compare something like Ace of Spades that's a 140, and then Lumina that's a current 150, they're in the same spot. It doesn't matter if you're using a controller, if you're using mouse and keyboard, if you're on console. The stability stat matches up at the same height. And some weapon models are going to be a little bit tough to judge, like Thorn, but they're there. So first thing, stability is universal on these hand cannons. There's some Duke frames in here as well as an aggressive frame. The Duke is special. It can reach 50 plus stability. Most of these aggressive frames live in that 30 to 40 stability range, sometimes 20, 25. But moving on, with this test, I needed an area where I can be at the same distance, I can shoot the same shot, have very specific surroundings to judge and measure. So we're here on Equinox, in a corner, shooting at the same corner on an edge, and from here, I try to replicate the same test over and over using whether it be a different platform, whether it be using a different input. And I need you to know for this test, I did it 10 times for a PC controller, PCM&K console. And with those 10 times, I matched all the specific frames up. And the timeline here is just from 3 tests that I just want to show for the video. It's not counting cross archetype comparisons. So, I mean, really there's triple of what you see here. But with this test, I need it to be known that there is going to be some human error. There 100% is, and that's why I had to replicate it so many times, because while I do need to line up the same exact shot every single time, that's one thing, but another thing to consider with stability is that there is a difference in recoil direction and recoil pattern. They're not the same. If you shoot a Suros regime on the wall, the recoil direction is going to tell you that it's going to go a little bit left, but when you start and stop shooting over and over, you're going to find that the pattern of the bullets is going to be a little bit different. Yes, it's going to tend left with its direction, but the recoil pattern is going to be a bit sporadic. So if you shoot like a recluse up against a wall, it has 100 recoil direction. Yeah, that direction is going to go straight up, but the pattern is going to be a little bit different. One time it's going to bounce a little bit left, then straighten up. Other times it's going to start straight, then go a little bit right, then shoot a little bit left. The bullet deviation is going to be a little bit different. The pattern. So with these hand cannons, they do the same thing. Sometimes it's going to be shooting straight up and down, but like on that third or fourth shot, it's going to shake your camera. It's going to turn your camera. And what I mean is like right here going back and forth between Duke and Spare. It's the same magnitude. They're in the same spot, but the camera shifted due to the pattern. And then I would shoot another shot and another shot and it would straighten back up. So when I tested these, I was using, of course, the actual height of the recoil, matching recoil patterns. And in this area, I was using this part of the structure to measure the distance, how much of the structure is seen or not seen, then measuring pixels and so on. And as we're going on here, let's talk about field of view. It plays a huge factor. Remember, console is getting a field of view slider with the new consoles. The recoil is harsher on console because of how close you are to the animation. If you're to bring your hand about 6 inches from your eyes and just wave it, then fully extend your arm out, continue waving, it's the same effect. With it extended out, you're going to see more with your vision. It's not as jarring, it's not right up in your face. It doesn't take up that much real estate of your vision. And when you're doing this while waving your hand, it's the same exact motion, but one of them is really close to your face and one's far away. So console recoil is extreme because of that field of view, because you're up a little bit closer, zoomed in. Controller on max field of view is a lot better than console, and then M&K is just a little bit better than that. And M&K does have recoil, contrary to what players believe. With that being said, it does have less recoil than a controller, and it's more controllable because of the mouse precision, but it's there. Another important thing to note is that Dire has a base 50 stability, which is way above average for a 150. When you take all legendary 150s in the game, the average stability is 43.5. Like Waking Vigil's stability stat is at 38. All the legendary 140s like Austringer, when you combine them and average them out, it's at 53.5. So Dire being at 50 is actually really perfect. We've established that the stability stat is universal. Most of your 140s are going to start a little bit above 50 anyway. For Dire Promise, and here we go. Here are the base stability outcomes. Every barrel, every mag, each one has a stability outcome from its base. And this doesn't have a stability mashwork included. Everything from Sure Shot, then adding perks to Crossfire, all of them, eventually you get to max base stability of 72. And that's with all the most beneficial stability perks on. Out of all these numbers, a lot of the time they show up again and again with different combinations. And out of those combinations, there's 11 unique stats that show up. These unique stats are what was used to judge the visual recoil, the magnitude of that recoil. And again, this is just the magnitude, how far it goes up on your screen, how jarring it is. Having a lot of stability actually does impact your accuracy cone for the better. That's a good thing. So even though it goes hand in hand, this is just the first part, the upkick. And going through these clips with the very last Dire Promise, it's actually at 68 stability with Elemental Capacitor. And as we're going through these, it does scale. The more stability that you add, the less it's kicking up. Eventually, we get close to that max stability. So one thing to confirm, yeah, of course, when you add on stability, you're gonna see it, you're gonna feel it. And a lot of these clips are only just 2 stat points away from each other. It still lessens it. It's like a snail just slowly creeping down. But in multiple tests, right here on console, on PC, with M&K, doesn't matter, we see this slight little jump. It happened in 5 of the tests, and right here has a little boost compared to all the other stats going from one to the other, and that's any platform and any field of view. And that's the stat jump from 66 to 68. The number could be 67, but it's calling it safe at 68 here. In theory, when you segment out the bar to 100%, you would think in quarters. We have 25% stability, 50, 75, 100. That 75% or a 75 stability stat would make the most sense to mean that it's just super high, on the way, almost, but not quite at max. But with this, to me, it makes sense that it's going to be around that 68 number, because remember, everything in Destiny starts to have minimal gains, range, handling, reload, and a lot of them just cap out. Stability does cap out, but it does scale. With stability here, it looks like once you hit 68, And then from that point on, you're getting small gains. They're still gains, but they're small at that point. Elemental capacitor is rumored to give around 15-20 or so stability. It's approaching max. And even when we go back here to a very beefy stability stat for these 140s, we have Old Fashioned and Nation of Beasts. I had to fine tune a stability masterwork to make them match, but again, and really important now and into the future, when talking about your visual recoil, the gun model does matter. Where a longer barrel, a Fallout style, Fallout-esque barrel, gives you a just ever slight tad bit increase to range, when the barrel is actually a little bit less, it's going to be less obstructive, meaning it's going to feel more stable. And again, comparing these two, look at the bottom of the barrel where it's coming up and rounding out to the end. It's in the same spot, it's just that the Old Fashioned has just a little bit extra. With these tests, this whole thing, this little adventure, this rabbit hole I went down, I did find that 68 stability looks like it does push it to that minimal gains aspect of the stat, but after that point, you still do have gains and they are noticeable. I plan to get into the new ranges of hand cannons, redo that whole test, then have this information there. We can kind of put it all together, and I think that there's a perfect hand cannon out there. But in the end, should you try to hit 68 stability? Not necessarily. Honestly, personally, I think the base 50-53 is just kind of fine. You can work with that. But when you start mix and matching the barrels and mags and masterworks, a lot of the time, you should hit that 68 stability number out of 140. It should get there. Maybe you're looking in Destiny Item Manager and you have a stability masterwork and you're sitting at 67 or 66. Go ahead and level it up a little bit to that 68 stat. At least that's what I would recommend, but always do what is best for you. If you're new here, remember the subscribe button, and if you are subscribed, thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to me. The channel memberships are live if you'd like to support that way for what I do. This one did take a long time to do. I went through some of the user error aspects. There's going to be, but that's why I did it so many times to try to replicate. I did the best that I could. I do feel good about what I said in the video though. Let's talk about it down below. Thank you for watching, and until the next one, I am CoolGuy.